Yo, what is up guys, Ferro here, and today we're going to be explaining all of Luffy's forms, all the way from base form Luffy to his current strongest form, Gear 4. Now, out of most shonen protagonists, Luffy by far has the most forms, which makes him very unique, because all of these forms are done with the use of the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which granted him the ability to become rubber. And these forms aren't necessarily more powerful than the others, they simply have some traits allocated differently. He might have power but not speed, he might have speed but not power, or he might even have both. It's not like Dragon Ball, whereas we definitely know that Super Saiyan 4 was stronger than Super Saiyan 3 and those below it. Since One Piece is composed of different type of fighters with different attack styles, Luffy created these forms to counter these individuals. So we are here to talk about all forms Luffy. Shout out to the Legend Mag. Now, first and foremost, we have Luffy's base form, which is what I call Luffy's gauging form, whereas he uses his base to gauge how strong said individual is. Then he chooses what form is necessary to counter said individual. This is also Luffy's weakest form, which is no surprise because this is his base form, but by no means is it weak. His attacks are still very strong, especially if amplified with ornament haki. He also has moderate speed with reaction time if paired up with observation haki, but there's one trait that is simply above the others, and that is his endurance and durability, his ability to withstand pain and damage. Now, before Dressrosa, we weren't exactly sure what Luffy's limits were, but during his fight with Katakuri that raged on for 11 hours, we got a glimpse of that. Now, even though Luffy did run away a couple of times during the fight, that doesn't deny the fact that Luffy was eating a lot of Katakuri's blows and would still get back up to fight some more. I guess this could be also tied to his will to never give up. If Luffy has his mind set on something, it's going to be hard to take him out, and this is one of the main reasons Luffy won that fight against Katakuri. Katakuri was the better fighter of the two, and for the most part he got more hits on Luffy. 85% of that fight was Katakuri dominating, and the other 15% was Luffy, which was during his initial transformation in Gear 4 against Katakuri, and during his Snake Man transformation at the end. That's really all Luffy had in that fight. However, because of his endurance, he was able to outlast Katakuri in that fight, which is again Luffy's greatest strength. But all in all, Luffy's base form is not only strong but also very important in terms of his overall combat ability. As he gets stronger in base form, his other forms would also be amplified in some way, shape, or form. But his biggest trials await him at Wano, where we're going to be dealing with the most physical fighters in the entirety of One Piece. But that's going to be really good moving forward. But the most effective way of taking Luffy out is piercing attacks or sword attacks or any slicing attacks. Physical blows doesn't seem to work that well on Luffy, even if amplified with haki. Then we have Gear 2, which is the most balanced and complete form that Luffy has, mainly for the reason that Luffy has found ways to go around its drawbacks. Now, the mechanics behind this form is that Luffy pumps his blood several times faster than usual, and because his heart can expand, it's made of rubber, it can handle the extreme pressure it causes in the heart, and in return this makes his body a lot stronger than usual. But it's also extremely fast. Now, this form was obviously created because Luffy wanted to become stronger, but also because he wanted to make his body strong enough to use Sora, which is one of the Cypher Post skill sets, which allows the user to move at sound breaking speeds. Again, as I said earlier, speed is Luffy's greatest asset in this form, and not so much power. Usually Luffy uses this as a standard in the New World, given as most pirates here are a lot stronger. However, this form's drawback slowly kills Luffy every time he uses it. Now, pre-time skip, the strain was a lot given the fact that he didn't have as much control over it, but with time his body is getting used to it. It has less of an effect on him, especially post time skip, as he turns it off and on during fights instead of just having it on the whole time. But this doesn't negate the fact that Luffy is still killing himself. He's simply killing himself at a lot slower rate. But this form for the most part is a fan favorite in the One Piece community, given the fact that it's not as goofy as Luffy's other forms, and this was before the reveal of Snake Man, which is everyone's favorite now. But yeah, all in all, this is Luffy's most balanced form form, and the form I think is closest to completion, but this is also my second favorite form. Then we have Gear 3rd, which is Luffy's second form. Now I wouldn't really call it a form given that he's not always in it. He uses one attack, then goes back to base form, and this is from what I've seen anyways. Now the mechanics behind this form is that Luffy is inflating his bones by biting into them. In return, this makes his body parts huge. Now Luffy has a lot of power in this form. He usually uses it against giants or slow individuals. However, it has a big flaw. It's very slow, and when Luffy uses it, he becomes vulnerable to attacks. This is seen during his fight between Rob Lucci, Doflamingo, and Cracker. Currently, I feel like this is Luffy's weakest form given the fact that he doesn't really have anything else other than power, and even then it's still weakening Gear 4 in terms of overall power. However, it does have a wider surface area of attack, so I guess if Luffy wants to destroy a mountain or something like that, this form would be his best guess. But apart from that, it's usually not that helpful in a fight, and yeah, this is my least favorite form. Now we're moving on to the realm of Gear 4, which is currently Luffy's strongest form, and again, as I mentioned before, they're not necessarily stronger than the others. They just simply have specific traits that are stronger. Now all of Gear 4 forms follow the same mechanics, which is muscle inflation. Luffy bites into his arm and inflates his muscles, and he also has steam in this form, which hints at him pumping his blood just like Gear 2nd. It also uses the concept of compression and tension, and this is why his attacks are incredibly strong in Gear 4. Now the first form in Gear 4 is Bounce Man or Bound Man. Now I'm not sure which one is the right translation, but this form is the most balanced out of any Gear 4 form, given the fact that it has a good amount of power and a good amount of speed, and it's also extremely versatile. As we saw during Luffy's fight with Doflamingo, Luffy overwhelmed Doflamingo because he had both speed and power. The perfect counter for Dofi when you think about it. Again, as I mentioned before, it uses compression for most of his attacks, whereas he retracts his fist into his arm to generate more power. Now just like every other gear that precedes Gear 2nd, it has a drawback, which is the worst drawback if you think about it. Now Luffy uses an incredible amount of ornament haki in his form that covers near enough his entire body except for the few bits in his torso, and in return this makes him unable to use ornament haki for 10 minutes. It also drains his stamina, and Luffy is usually very tired getting out of the transformation. This is shown during his fight with Doflamingo, Cracker, and Katakuri. But overall, since this is the most balanced form, I also think this is Luffy's current strongest form in Gear 4. Now Tankman is the second form shown, and this was during his fight against Cracker, and judging by its title, it's a defensive form, or a form that can, take a lot of hits. Now Luffy did not show a lot during his fight against Cracker because Luffy finished that fight a few minutes before going into Tankman, so the only attack we know in this form is Cannonball, whereas Luffy takes in an attack and reflects them several times stronger. Now something I should mention is that this version of Tankman was the full version because Luffy ate Cracker's biscuit and became fat, so we're not exactly sure how the regular Tankman looks like, but we do know that his ornament haki is surrounded in different parts of his body than Bound Man, but I do think we might see it during one or maybe one of Kaido's calamities. Finally, we have Snake Man, which I think is the best when it comes down to design and when it comes down to aesthetics. I was expecting something like this during Luffy's fight with Doflamingo. Now Snake Man was first shown during Luffy versus Katakuri, and in terms of how it operates, it's a lot similar to Bound Man, but it has a lot less air. Now this is Luffy's fastest form in terms of attacks. You could say this is a Gear 2nd version of Gear 4, if that makes any sense. Now the main form of attack in this form is the Culverin, which is used also in Gear 4. The snake-like attack Luffy did against Doflamingo, but this version is several times faster that even someone like Katakuri, who has future vision, has a hard time dealing against it. Without the use of observation haki, this form would absolutely destroy you. It also has a decent amount of power, not as much as Gear 4, but definitely stronger than Gear 2nd. But yeah, all in all, this form is a really good form, and this would be a really good matchup for individuals who move really fast. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Comment down below what you guys think. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe for more content on this channel. It is Ferro guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.